we're uniquely positioned the way our infrastructure is set up. We've got two interstates, north, south, east, west. We've got rail. We've got our port that we've invested heavily in. From a quality of life perspective, you could be downtown with arts and entertainment, and you can be at the beach within 20 minutes. And then you've got the St. Johns River. Lots of recreation. We have the largest park space in the continental United States. We have the largest park system. Lots of green space with a lot of activities to do.
Yeah.
And we're near magnificent colleges and universities that allow us to attract talent.
I love that. I'm one of those data points that moved here from Miami like 4 years ago. I also lived in Southern California in my early 20s. Everything that you're saying supports my pitch, right? Like I always talk about it like this is Orange County, California 40 years ago. This like great attachment to open spaces, amazing climate, super high quality of life, great road trips.
And the traffic. I mean, you mentioned you came from South Florida. And look, the reason that our traffic isn't terrible, a big reason is, so our local government, we work with the state. The Florida Department of Transportation, in conjunction with us, has done really great planning and investing in advance. So you're not sitting in traffic all day when you're trying to get home.
Yeah.
Or going to work.
100%.
Or going to school.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I totally night and day difference from SoCal and Miami when it comes to the traffic. One of the big things though is this idea of economic development and kind of how you're spearheading that. I remember hearing about you recruiting people to the city with like billboards and recruiting businesses to the city. Do you want to tell me a little bit about kind of like what the messaging was on that one, on those?
Yeah, well, it was just a fun thing we did. I mean, so that's not how you attract the big companies. So that was a fun thing. You know, we were during COVID, coming out of COVID, Florida being the free state of Florida. We wanted people to know, if you're coming to Florida, we want you to come to Jacksonville. So we did various billboards in other states, that California, I believe New York, and there were a handful of others. But the real work is we work really closely with the chamber in attracting companies. Dun & Bradstreet just relocated their corporate headquarters here. That company's been around since the 1850s. Abraham Lincoln worked at that company.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of history.
Yeah,
right?
that's a lot of history. Yeah.
Right. Johnson & Johnson's doing a massive capital investment, $100 million right now. We've got tons of fintech companies in this town.
Paysafe, I think, just announced
that's
bringing
right.
600 jobs.
That's right.
Is that what it was?
And we're working on another fintech company that's very large as well.
Yeah, we're quickly establishing ourselves
That's
as
right.
a fintech hub. Although, and I've been here for the better part of 17 years now, I can't remember anybody ever talking about Jacksonville as a fintech hub more than a few years ago. And all of a sudden you look at the type of companies that we have here and the headquarters that we have here, with FIS just building their corporate headquarters right on the river, spending $165 million.
So that was a big one. So yeah. FIS needed space. So they were either going to relocate to somewhere else in Jacksonville outside of the downtown, or the other possibility, we got news that a governor of another state was recruiting them heavily to leave Jacksonville, to leave Florida. So I got our governor, Ron DeSantis, on the phone. It was a Friday night. I remember when I got the call that they were being heavily recruited. What do we do to get them to stay in Florida, to stay in Jacksonville? And we started working with them. So there were incentives involved in that deal, in them building that corporate headquarters. So we retained them in the state, we retained them in Jacksonville, we retained them downtown, and we have a new beautiful building downtown.
It's amazing. We were actually blessed to have Gary Norcross on the show not too long ago, and he talked about that process, and he talked about how influential the relationship with you and with our government here, our city government here, was to make sure that they could stay here, that it made a lot of sense for them to stay here. Because he talked about it, he said, we had options, but Jacksonville was the number one option for us.
And I'll tell you where the fintech started stuff. So many years ago, before people were even using the word fintech, when Bill Foley relocated FNF from California to Jacksonville. And they're all get different companies now, but they were all born from his entrepreneurship at some point. FNF, FIS, Black Knight. And so that fundamentally changed the workforce in Jacksonville and continues to.
Right.
Little side note, Bill Foley owns the Black Knights. He's the majority owner. He's the owner of the hockey team out in Las Vegas.
Oh, all right.
Didn't know
we
that.
have that touch. So you'll see people in Jacksonville rooting for the Vegas Knights.
There you go.
It's because of that connection.
Is that, I've heard whispers of a NHL city kind of thing. Does that play into that relationship playing at all? Is that something that we can talk about? I know that it's not anything for sure, but I know that there have
been some very early conversations with some pretty high ups in NHL.
That's cool.
I mean, there's nothing immediate.
Yeah.
But these things take time.
You know what I hear, Lenny, a lot on this show when we bring on people that are, right, like one of the content pillars that we have on the show, we talk a lot about investing in real estate and other asset classes, but we bring in leaders, like yourself, like Gary Norcross. And one of the things that really stands out to me is the public-private partnership and how alive and well it is here in Jacksonville. And I was recently listening to your podcast, and it was Mark Lamping talking about how he moved here because everybody here is friendly, right? Like St. Louis, they talk about the Midwest, and everybody's so friendly in the Midwest, but it's not so open to foreign people, and people don't say hi on the streets. Do you think that is the ease of public-private partnership that you seem to see happening here in Jacksonville? Is that just a cultural thing? Is that something that you've worked hard at? Can you tell me a little bit?
Well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but let's talk about what you just said, that Mark Lamping said, and I think I may have said this to him on that same podcast. I mean, I remember my wife's not from Jacksonville, and this was many years ago when people actually still went into banks. We didn't have online banking. Yeah. She came home, she said, my gosh, I went into the bank and somebody, like a random person, just said hello to me.
Yeah.
And that is the culture of Jacksonville.
Right.
The entire metropolitan area. Everybody's nice and friendly and charitable. The public-private partnerships are really important. And so I'm a Republican, right? And there's a debate in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party as well about the role of government and incentives.
Right.
And there are some that are just against them.
Right.
And they say, well, let the market just take care of it. That is the market now. If you're going to compete for businesses, right? Other states and other local governments are offering incentives based on a rate of return. That's the market we live in. So I embrace it. We do it in a way that's good by taxpayers, but we would not have had the large relocations of big companies and talent to Jacksonville without public-private partnerships and the use of incentives.
100%. In fact, we talk a lot about this on the real estate developer side, with our commitment to downtown Jacksonville and the moves that we've made to acquire number of buildings and properties and all that. That's not happening without incentives. What do you think the number one most misunderstood thing is about incentives in terms of the general public?
The headlines you get. A media source will write a headline that says X dollar in incentives, and that appears that the city set out, wrote a check.
Right.
Well, no. What probably happened, as an example, there's a piece of property that's not generating any property tax. A company does something there.
Right.
And you allow them to take that property tax revenue, and instead of giving it to the city, reinvest it, right?
Right, exactly.
And so the public, when they see the headline, they think city wrote a check.
Right.
All we did was take an asset that wasn't generating revenue, allow it to begin generating revenue, and for a period of time, it'd be reinvested.
100%. I can definitely attest to that. That's on the property tax side. And then on any other type of incentive when it comes to renovating a building, we're currently going through that. We haven't completed our renovations, and the city doesn't give us any of those incentives until the renovations are complete, right?
Yeah, you have to perform.
You have to perform, which is the way it should be. But I agree with you that just the lack of how this is built to benefit the people of the city immediately compared to nothing that was going to happen is just completely misunderstood. And I'm glad that we have the opportunity now to share that more, because cities just languishing and waiting is a big problem. I mean, I've been here for 17 years, and prior to your administration here, right? Everybody talked about unrealized potential. Right. Unrealized potential. Well, unrealized potential is also a part of not doing incentive packages, in my opinion,
You have to be very aggressive on this stuff too sometimes, and you bring the right people in at the right time. So when we are attracting a company, they'll come to town with some of their top level employees, and there'll be maybe multiple dinners or lunches. And what's really cool to see is other corporate CEOs in town that have nothing to do with that industry or that business will come to these because they care about our city and they want to attract the other CEOs to come here. When I won my first election in 2015, E&Y was looking at a major expansion, and I had not been sworn in yet, and we were told we were losing. I was told the city's not going to get it, and I, with others, started working it, and it happened. Sometimes it's just doing the work, right?
Yeah. Yeah, GC's being humble. They just got awarded E&Y Entrepreneur of the Year.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
you're doing great stuff.
Probably because of the relationship we had with the local partners here at E&Y. So we have a lot to thank for you for that.